But the news was just announced that WNBA TV ratings are down more than 50% since Caitlin Clark's injury. And it was also reported that the Indiana Fever television viewership is also down over.
The WNBA recently received a harsh reality check. As Caitlin Clark recovers from her injury on the bench, the league's ratings have completely collapsed. We're talking about a catastrophic 55% decline in viewing. The stats don't lie, and they present a picture that has the league in a panic.
3%. Now, I know a lot of us were expecting some sort of dip since Caitlin Clark has been out with injury, but I don't think all of us were expecting the entire viewership of the entire.
This is the result of biting the hand that feeds you. Let's examine these startling figures first. Do you believe the WNBA is finally recognizing how much they need Caitlin Clark, or will they continue to act as like this is merely a coincidence? Please share your opinions in the comments section below.
Getting Caitlin Clark for the New York Liberty game. Stephanie White made made a statement on that today.
Well, who is suddenly worried about ratings? The WNBA, the same league that for the majority of the previous season either ignored or downplayed Caitlin Clark's impact, is now staring at some numbers that would make any executive wince. Let's talk about these ratings because, holy cow, they're worse than anyone anticipated. We're looking at a 55% drop in viewership for nationally televised games without Clark. To put this into perspective, that's a straight-up nosedive. Games with Clark had an average of 1.8 million viewers. Without her, that number has dropped to 847,000, hardly making up half of the viewership. I know some will respond, oh, it's just because she's a popular player. However, let's face it, this is about more than simply popularity. It's about the WNBA's total failure to generate long-term interest in more than one player, and it's not Caitlin's fault.
I felt like mishandled so many things with the WNBA last season, and specifically with Caitlin Clark and her fan base. And that's one thing when you start thinking about how many people stopped watching when Caitlin Clark got injured. A lot of people stopped watching because they are boycotting the WNBA. They don't want to give viewership to any other teams or any other players, whether they like other players on the team or not, because of how the media and the league itself has handled Caitlin Clark and how they have treated her fans. Caitlin Clark and Indiana Fever fans have been called.
Remember how the league and media figures used to constantly tell Clark's fans that they should support other players and enjoy real basketball? Remember how they used to call these new fans fake, claiming that they were only watching because Clark was white and not because she was incredibly talented? How is that working out for you now?
Down. And this tweet from Christine Brennan really stuck out to me. She said one player gets injured and more than half the TV audience for the entire league disappears. Has any other athlete ever had that kind of impact on a sport? Golf without Tiger definitely dropped precipitously on occasion, but not like this. A truly remarkable sports story continues. Now, we've gone over the Caitlin Clark effect, and I've also been one who has compared Caitlin to the likes of Tiger Woods just purely on her impact that she's had on the WNBA, but this news is alarming for the league, and it's alarming for the league because this is such a crucial year for the WNBA. At the end of this season, the WNBA will go into CBA negotiations. If negotiations go well, then every single player in the WNBA has a much better chance of making so much more in their next.
I think the irony is delightful. Instead of embracing the millions of new fans she brought in, the WNBA alienated them and spent so much time trying to minimize Clark's impact by acting as though the league was fine without her. Instead of using her popularity to elevate other players, they created this strange adversarial relationship where supporting Clark somehow meant you were against everyone else. Now look where we are. Clark gets hurt, and the WNBA is suddenly realizing what happens when you don't properly nurture your fan base. These numbers aren't just embarrassing. They're a warning that the league may be too obstinate to address.
We've got a bigger sample size of the ratings without Caitlin Clark. And they're pretty bad. Well, I don't want to say the ratings are bad, but they're just down a lot. A whole lot. So we're going to look at that and wow, I saw those numbers and was like, holy hell. Kathy Engelbert WNBA commissioner. You got your ears on? I mean, what's the F around and find out? You're finding out. Rat cheer and rat now. Yeah.
Let's examine the true meaning of these ratings for the Indiana Fever. During her absence, Clark's team saw a 53% decline in viewership, but the worst part is that the league as a whole saw a 55% decline in nationally televised games. This indicates that Clark wasn't just boosting her team's popularity. Rather, she was elevating the league's profile. Consider that for a split second, one player's injury caused half of the WNBA's television audience to vanish. Has any athlete in any sport ever had that kind of impact? Christine Brennan offered an intriguing analogy between Tiger Woods and golf, but even Tiger's absence didn't result in such a sharp decline right away. When you unknowingly put all of your eggs in one basket, this is what happens. Because they were too proud to acknowledge that perhaps this rookie second-year player was bringing something special to the table that they should have been celebrating rather than downplaying, the WNBA was too preoccupied with proving they didn't need Clark to ever bother figuring out how to keep her fans interested in the rest of the league.
Single name under the sun. They have been called out by players in the WNBA. The media has, you've seen it. We've talked about it here. You can't miss it on social media every single day. There is some media personality saying something bad about Caitlin Clark's fans, calling the fans names, saying that they are not there for basketball. They're just following Caitlin because she's white, or they're trying to push a certain agenda. Like, the narratives surrounding the biggest fan base to ever come to the WNBA have been actually insane. And then it goes as far as to the first game of the season, which was at Indiana against the Chicago Sky. Right after that game, they opened an investigation once again into the fans, where they found nothing, but the damage had already been done at that point. If some of these things happen just one time here and there, or there's one certain media personality who's just always saying these kind of things, then whatever. I feel like fans as a whole can be like, okay, whatever, this person is just a hater. But this is something that has happened over and over and over again, and over time it starts chipping away at how much you're going to actually care and want to support an organization if they continue to do.
The games that have been played without Clark will be discussed. The Liberty vs. Sky game with Angel Reese attracted about 600,000 viewers, which isn't bad by pre-Clark WNBA standards, but it's a big change from what we were seeing when Clark was healthy. The production values for the WNBA games on Amazon Prime and NBA TV are, to put it mildly, not great when Clark was playing, but fans were willing to put up with this because the basketball was worth it without her. Speaking of Angel Reese, let's address the obvious. The media spent a lot of effort to create a rivalry between Clark and Reese, promoting the idea that they were equals in terms of drawing power. The ratings don't lie. Reese is a talented player, but she's not moving the needle the way Clark does, and that's not a slight on Reese. It's just the truth. The WNBA's handling of Clark's injury has been interesting to watch. It's wise that coach Stephanie White is exercising the proper caution. The WNBA star power is clearly being prioritized over short-term gains by the team, as evidenced by the fact that Clark has been sidelined since May 24th due to a strained left quad, and prior to that she was dealing with an ankle injury. However, you can bet that the league office is sweating every day that she is off the court. The league needs to take a close look at how they develop and market their other players, because they are currently learning a very costly lesson about putting all of their promotional eggs in one basket while simultaneously attempting to act as though that basket doesn't exist. The WNBA is entering CBA negotiations at the end of the season, and these numbers will significantly affect those talks, so the timing of this ratings collapse couldn't be worse. Player pay, perks, and working conditions are all dependent on league income. If one player is hurt, your revenue would drop by 55%, which will have an impact on everyone's bottom line. It's also important to remember that Clark's accident occurred just as the league was beginning to gain traction. The WNBA was having its moment at the beginning of the season, with record-breaking attendance and viewership figures. Corporate sponsors were paying attention, but then Clark gets hurt, and all of a sudden we're back to normal. The frustrating thing is that this could have been avoided entirely if the WNBA had spent the previous year figuring out how to turn Clark's fans into league fans rather than lecturing them about what true basketball fandom looks like. Instead of creating this strange zero-sum game where supporting Clark meant somehow devaluing everyone else, they could have created something sustainable. Instead, We got countless articles about how problematic Clark's fans were, how they were only watching because of their race, how they didn't understand basketball, and how players made snide remarks about the attention Clark was receiving. Additionally, media personalities pretended that the WNBA was somehow better before Clark arrived. Congratulations! Without giving away any spoilers, you can see what the WNBA looks like now that Clark is out. It resembles the league 5 years ago, when no one was paying attention and players were earning pitiful salaries. The situation with Sophie Cunningham adds even more layers to this mess. She has been sidelined due to personal injury issues, and the Indiana Fever are essentially running with a skeleton crew of their most popular players. Cunningham appears ready to return, but the team is being cautious with her too-shrewd move, which means the ratings bleeding continues. What's really telling is how the league is handling this crisis. There is no official acknowledgement of the drop in ratings, no strategic plan to keep fans engaged during Clark's absence, just business as usual, which is exactly the wrong approach. This is a crisis that needs immediate attention, not time to waste. Fans were ready to ignore the poor broadcast quality when Clark was playing because the game was so captivating. Nevertheless, without her, those production problems would have been much more obvious. This is where the WNBA's lack of investment in their product truly shows. They have been so focused on simply existing that they haven't put the resources into making their broadcast must-see television. The announcing is frequently subpar, the camera work is inconsistent, and the overall production feels minor league compared to other professional sports. Fans accustomed to NFL or NBA production values won't stick around for inferior broadcasting when the star attraction isn't there. The Atlanta Dream vs. Fever match without Clark is a prime illustration. Fans may endure a shoddy transmission to watch Clark destroy the sky, but they won't do it to watch the Dream play without any well-known actors. That's simply the way things are. Given that Clark was averaging 19 points prior to her injury, it is evident why people were paying attention. She already had a triple-double this season, averaging 9.3 assists and 6 rebounds per game. Her assist total is especially impressive, and she was improving everyone around her, which is exactly what great players do. However, beyond the numbers, Clark brings something special to the court that makes casual fans pause and watch. She creates moments that people talk about the next day, and very few players in any sport have that ability, and the WNBA is learning that lesson the hard way. The fact that Clark had played 183 straight games across college and her first WNBA season before this injury shows just how durable she typically is. This isn't a player who misses games lightly. When she's hurt, she's really hurt, and the team is right to be cautious. The Fever's 4-5 record without their best player is actually pretty respectable, all things considered, but from a business perspective, wins and losses don't matter if nobody's watching. The WNBA is an entertainment product. First and foremost, and without their biggest draw, they're struggling to entertain. What's really going to be interesting is how the league responds when Clark returns. Will they double down on their previous approach of trying to diminish her impact, or will they finally acknowledge that she's the goose that lays the golden eggs and start treating her accordingly? The smart money says they'll probably do a little of both, publicly downplay her importance while privately doing everything they can to keep her healthy and on the court, but that kind of cognitive dissonance isn't sustainable long-term. The upcoming game against the Liberty would have been a perfect showcase for Clark's return. The Liberty are playing the best basketball in the league right now, and a Clark versus Sabrina Ionesco matchup would have been appointment television. Instead, we're likely getting another low-rated game that most casual fans will skip. This whole situation is a masterclass in how not to manage your most valuable asset. The WNBA had lightning in a bottle with Clark's rookie season, but instead of capitalizing on it, they spent their time trying to convince everyone that the lightning wasn't that bright. Now they're sitting in the dark wondering where all the electricity went. The lesson here is simple. When you have a transcendent talent who brings unprecedented attention to your league, you embrace it, you don't fight it, you don't diminish it, and you certainly don't alienate the fans who come along with it. The WNBA failed that test spectacularly, and now they're paying the price. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert must be looking at these numbers and wondering how things went so wrong so quickly when your entire business model unintentionally revolves upon one player and you're too proud to acknowledge it. The league might be riding high with record attendance and ratings 1 minute and then return to pre-Clark levels of irrelevance the next. The most annoying thing is that this could have been prevented if the WNBA had invested in better production values and marketing, welcomed new fans instead of lecturing them, and spent the previous year elevating other players rather than discrediting Clark. If they had done these things, they might not be in this mess, but they did not. And now they are discovering what happens when you take your audience for granted. Half of them vanish the moment your star player is injured, which is not a sustainable business model and is not a recipe for long-term success. The WNBA is at a crossroads. They can either continue to act as though Clark's influence isn't that great and that the decline in ratings is a fluke that will be resolved once she returns, or they can finally face reality and begin making the necessary adjustments to create a sustainable league around their biggest star. Based on their past performance, I'm not sure which course they'll take, but these ratings numbers don't lie and they'll be very difficult to ignore. So there you have it, the WN. Click like and subscribe for more nasty sports truth.